Hello, friends. If you're curious about the movie The Meg, 2018, you're in the perfect place. Don't forget to give this video a quick like, it really helps us out. And if you're new here, hit subscribe to stay updated on all the latest movie deep dives. Let's jump right in. It begins where the ocean stops being a postcard, where sunlight fades and the pressure rises and the blackness swallows everything, where creatures from prehistoric nightmares might still prowl, unseen, undisturbed, beneath the tectonic crust that seals the ocean's deepest secrets. It starts with a breach, not just of technology or ambition, but of nature itself. And once that breach is made, the depths push something back. Something that was never meant to see the light of day again. This isn't a quiet thriller. It doesn't pretend to be. It doesn't whisper tension. It crashes through it like a tidal wave of muscle and teeth. It brings with it the flavor of pulpy monster flicks from decades past, but reimagined for an era of slick visuals, global scale, and a lead actor who punches problems more often than he ponders them. It's a creature feature on steroids, built for spectacle, speed, and one enormous bite at a time. The plot wastes no time on subtlety. We're plunged into the waters off the coast of China, where an ambitious undersea research facility has discovered something extraordinary. A hidden trench beneath the Mariana Trench, sealed off by a layer of cold hydrogen sulfide. It's a kind of secret ocean within the ocean, untouched for millions of years. A place where evolution took a left turn and never looked back. And inside it, sleeping like a god in exile, is something that should have stayed buried. To explore this trench, the research team sends down a submersible. But contact is lost. Something massive, fast, impossibly aggressive, attacks. And the only man capable of pulling off a rescue is a deep-sea diver who's seen this kind of horror before. He's haunted. Hardened, written off as unstable. But he's the one name they all whisper when the impossible becomes real. He agrees to go, reluctantly, diving into the black with the weight of his past pressing on every breath. What they bring back isn't just survivors. They bring back the thing that attacked them. In breaching the trench, they create a rift, a thermocline breach, that allows the creature to rise. A megalodon. A prehistoric shark the size of a blue whale, thought to be extinct for over 2 million years. It bursts into the open ocean with hunger hardwired into its DNA and a total disregard for anything in its path. Ships vanish. Whales are shredded like bait fish. And the only thing more terrifying than its appetite is how smart it seems. The cast assembles like a survival team in a disaster film. Scientists, engineers, wealthy financiers, and crew members who were never trained to fight a monster the size of a bus. There's a father-daughter duo trying to steer the mission back to purpose. A young girl who forms a bond with the hero. A billionaire whose motives might not be as scientific as he claims. And at the center of it all, the man with the harpoon, the history, and the habit of diving headfirst into danger when everyone else swims for shore. What follows is an escalation, of attacks, of tension, of disbelief. The megalodon becomes more than a threat. It becomes a force of nature. Beaches become battlegrounds. Ships are shredded into flotsam. Helicopters rise and fall in the same breath. Every scene builds with the giddy logic of a thrill ride. Bigger, louder, faster. But even in the chaos, there's a strange kind of charm. The film knows what it is. It doesn't ask for realism. It asks you to hold your breath and go under. The cinematography leans into spectacle, but there are moments, brief, unsettling, where silence creeps in. A dark shape gliding beneath swimmers. A massive eye appearing just outside the glass. A dorsal fin rising like a curse through a sea of oblivious tourists. These are the beats that harken back to the monster movies of the past, where fear wasn't in the attack, but in the waiting. The pause. The breath before everything goes wrong. But the action never stays quiet for long. The hero squares off against the creature again and again, in helicopters, in subs, in the open water armed with nothing but guts and a spear. He becomes less a man and more a myth, a reluctant soldier in a war against an ancient enemy. And every time you think the threat is neutralized, the ocean throws back something bigger, meaner, smarter, until finally it becomes a duel. Not science versus nature, not man versus beast, but instinct against instinct. Along the way, there are moments of humanity. A child gazing into the tank as the shark brushes against the glass. A crew member risking everything to save a friend. A joke cracked under pressure. These are the fragments that keep the story from tipping into total bombast. They're brief, yes, but they remind you that people, flawed, terrified, determined, are at the center of all this. And that when faced with something unknowable, survival is not just about strength. It's about connection. There are twists, of course. A second megalodon. An ambush where the hunters become prey. A betrayal that puts lives at risk. The ocean itself becomes an ever-shifting battlefield. Crystal blue one moment, a blood-soaked hell the next. And as the stakes rise, the hero dives deeper, chasing the monster into its own territory. There's a kind of poetry in it. The man who lost everything to the deep, now facing it again with nothing left to lose. The climax is a ballet of violence and vengeance, man and monster locked in a final showdown. But even in its most outrageous moments, the film never lets go of its identity. It's not trying to make a statement. It's trying to entertain. To make you gasp, laugh, flinch, and cheer. And it does. When the water finally stills, when the beast is gone and the survivors surface, there's a breath of calm. Not because everything is fixed, but because, just for a moment, humanity stood toe-to-toe with the abyss, and didn't blink. And in that moment, you realize something. For all its bombast and spectacle, the story tapped into something primal. The fear of what lies beneath. The thrill of seeing it with your own eyes. The fantasy of fighting it and winning. It's not just a monster movie. It's a dare. To go deeper. To swim faster. To never look away. Beneath the shimmering surface of the Pacific, where light flickers out like the last breath of a dying flame, something stirs. The ocean grows colder, darker, and stranger the deeper you go. But even in the age of deep-sea technology and limitless ambition, there are places meant to be left untouched. Forgotten corners of the earth, sealed away by time, pressure, and mystery. This story begins in one such place, a trench beyond reckoning, hidden beneath a false ocean floor, where a new world waits undisturbed. Until now. It starts with a daring dive. A scientific marvel, the Mana 1 research station, a marvel of human curiosity and hubris, floats above this abyss, ready to pierce into an ancient place untouched by history. Funded by billionaire Jack Morris and operated by a team of brilliant oceanographers and engineers, Mana 1 is the gateway to this new frontier. The team is convinced the Mariana Trench isn't the deepest point on Earth, but merely a clouded lid over something deeper. Something more. They send a submersible down, manned by a small crew including Toshi, the calm and noble technician, the Wall, the friendly giant of the team, and Lori, a skilled pilot with ties to the past. The dive begins smoothly. Lights penetrate a liquid darkness thicker than space itself, and below that curtain of thermocline, cold and dense and deceptive, they find it. A second ocean. Glowing, strange, dreamlike. A biome untouched for millions of years. The expedition, for a fleeting moment, is a triumph. And then everything goes wrong. From the blackness, something moves. Faster than sound, bigger than any living thing has the right to be. It slams into the submersible, sending it tumbling. Communications are severed. The craft is stranded, damaged, and the crew is trapped under the crushing weight of the ocean, with their oxygen slowly ticking away. On the surface, panic sets in. Dr. Zhang, the dignified scientist leading the mission, understands the stakes. So does his daughter, Suine, a brilliant oceanographer in her own right. But their best option, maybe their only one, is a man they swore they'd never ask again. Jonas Taylor. Years ago, Jonas left the deep. Once a rescue diver, he witnessed something no one believed. A shape, a force in the dark. It tore through a nuclear sub during a mission, forcing Jonas to make a call no one could forget: leave behind the trapped crew or lose everyone. He chose survival, and was branded a madman for it. No one believed in monsters. Not then. Now, with another crew trapped in a similar situation and no one else capable of the dive, Zhang and Morris track him down in Thailand, living in self-imposed exile, drowning his guilt in beer and silence. They make their case. He says no. Then they tell him Lori, his ex-wife, is down there. And suddenly, the past is breathing down his neck. He boards the rescue ship reluctantly, bitter and weathered, dragging with him more baggage than equipment. His return to the ocean is like a reckoning. Every step back into the suit, every breath through the rebreather, is haunted by memory. But there's no time to hesitate. The rescue craft descends. The trench looms. And soon, Jonas is plunging into the abyss once more, alone in a tiny vessel, into the place that nearly broke him. The trench swallows him whole. Down below, the submersible crew is fading. Oxygen's low. Pressure's rising. Toshi writes a final letter to his wife. The wall jokes to stay sane. Lori tries to hold the team together. Then, through the fog, Jonas arrives. The rescue is tense. The vessel is damaged, and only limited passengers can make it back in one trip. Toshi, calm even in death, chooses to stay behind, sacrificing himself to ensure the others survive. It's a moment of quiet heroism, played not for tears, but for truth. Jonas gets Lori and the wall out. They ascend, and for a brief instant, it seems like the worst is over. But the surface holds its own nightmare. In piercing the thermocline, the team has done something unimaginable. They've opened a door. The trench, once sealed by cold, has been breached. And something ancient has slipped through. Jonas sees it first. A shape in the water. A fin bigger than a sail. Eyes like voids. Teeth like monuments. He knows what it is before anyone else can name it. A megalodon. The predator of the prehistoric sea. The largest shark that ever lived, long extinct, until now. And it's free. From this point, the ocean becomes a battlefield. The crew scrambles to understand what they've unleashed. Suin, driven by a mix of awe and responsibility, attempts to tranquilize the creature herself. She dives in a glider, armed with serum and guts, while Jonas monitors from above. But things quickly spiral. The megalodon rams the glider, almost swallowing her whole. Jonas dives again, risking his life to pull her out. It's fast, brutal, and terrifying. Survivors watch the water with a new kind of fear. The balance of power in the ocean has shifted. The shark is no longer just a threat. It's a ghost from evolution, a reminder that nature still holds cards we can't predict or control. And yet, not everyone grasps the gravity of what's happened. Jack Morris, the financier, sees an opportunity. Fame. Headlines. He downplays the danger to save face. But the deaths mount. A whale corpse washes up, torn apart. A deep-sea rescue sub is crushed. Even a helicopter crashes trying to lift a research cage. Blood in the water becomes a calling card. The shark is not just hunting. It's exploring. And it's heading for the coast. Jonas and Suin, now allies in urgency, try to devise a plan. But the megalodon keeps outpacing them. It's not behaving like any known animal. It's learning. Testing. Circling. Every encounter ends in disaster. Every attempt to track it ends with lost signals and wreckage. On a remote beach, families gather, swimmers splash, and parasails drift lazily above the waves. Beneath them, unseen, a shadow grows. The team races to warn authorities, to stop the bloodbath they know is coming. But they're running out of time. And the ocean is wide. So wide. Somewhere far below the surface, where the light has never dared to go, a door was opened. And from that door, something ancient emerged, flesh and instinct sculpted in the dark, shaped for one purpose, to devour. Now, it swims freely, a living relic of a time when monsters ruled the seas. It has tasted blood, tested boundaries, and begun to learn the patterns of the modern world. But even as fear takes root across coastlines and news feeds, those on the front lines know this isn't the end, it's only the beginning. The creature, massive and calculating, doesn't behave like a mindless animal. It lurks where prey gathers. It changes its patterns. It watches. And as the crew at Mana 1 races to warn the world, it's already swimming toward its next feast. A packed bay. Boats. Swimmers. Tourists. Noise and motion and vulnerability. It's not a feeding ground, it's a buffet. The team scrambles. They suit up. They plan an intercept. But the Megalodon arrives first. On the crowded beach, chaos erupts. Inflatable toys burst. People scream. The water turns red. But it's not the slaughter the audience braces for. The film toys with its own spectacle, building suspense with near misses and clever misdirections. A boy on a float nearly becomes a meal, only to be saved by sheer luck and a last-minute distraction. Lifeguards and helicopters scramble, but the ocean is vast, and the beast moves like a shadow. Amid the panic, the crew launches a new plan, to tag the shark with a tracking device and inject it with poison strong enough to stop its prehistoric heart. This time, they go together. Jonas and Suine, along with Jax, Mac, DJ, and The Wall, form a unit, bruised, tired, but bonded now. They've lost friends. Toshi. Others. And they've come too far to stop. The chase is tense, unfolding in the open sea, with sonar pings and heartbeats ticking in tandem. Suine descends in a reinforced shark cage, holding the poison-tipped spear. The shark circles, curious. Then it strikes. Steel buckles. The cage bends inward. Water floods. And above, the winch gives out. The cable begins to snap. Jonas dives. He cuts through the water like a missile, knowing he may not return. He reaches her just as the cage tears open, grabs her, and kicks for the surface with every ounce of strength. The shark surges after them, a train of muscle and rage. But the crew fires a torpedo net just in time, tangling the creature long enough for them to escape. It's wounded, weak, and sinking. But then comes the twist. As they haul the body onto the deck of the ship, celebration breaks out. Laughter. Relief. Champagne is cracked open. Jack Morris calls for press. The nightmare seems over. Until it isn't. Because the dead shark on the deck isn't the shark. It's another one. A smaller megalodon, still enormous by modern standards, but not the true monster. They've been hunting the wrong one. From the depths, the real megalodon breaches. It crashes onto the boat like a hammer from heaven, cleaving metal and ripping through steel as if it were tissue paper. In the chaos, the Wall is thrown overboard. Morris tries to flee on a private vessel, only to be swallowed whole in a perfect, poetic punishment for his arrogance. The ship explodes. The remaining crew barely survives, swimming to wreckage in the burning wake. Back at Mana 1, those who remain regroup, soaked and shaken. They realize now that force won't be enough. The megalodon isn't just big, it's intelligent and it's relentless. But they have one advantage left: Jonas. He knows the ocean. And now, he knows the creature. They devise a final strategy: to lure it into a trap in shallow waters near a rocky trench, where it will be more vulnerable. But to do that, Jonas has to go back in. Alone. Into its domain. Armed with a glider rig, sonar distractions, and a harpoon the size of a javelin, He sets off on one last dive, a silent reckoning beneath the waves. The final confrontation plays out in a dance of silence and motion. No loud music. No quippy dialogue. Just Jonas, gliding through a blue void, waiting. Above, the team tracks every movement, hearts clenched. When the megalodon appears, it's like a mountain moving through space. Its eyes fix on him. Its jaws open. He strikes. The harpoon hits flesh, but it's not enough. The shark turns. Charges. The glider is wrecked. Jonas is thrown into open water, flailing, bleeding, drawing the creature to him by scent and motion. But it's not desperation, it's strategy. He climbs onto its back, wedges the harpoon deeper, and opens a wound along its side. It roars, not a sound, but a movement, a tremor in the water felt in the bones. Still, it doesn't die. As Jonas floats, exhausted, the beast circles for the kill. But above, help arrives. Rainn, refusing to leave him, dives in another vessel and fires a second shot, this time into the open wound. The combined damage is enough. The megalodon slows, falters, then begins to sink, its size folding into stillness, into shadow, until it disappears below the waves one final time. The water calms. The bubbles rise. And Jonas, bloodied and breathless, floats back to the surface. He's pulled into the boat by Rainn, both of them gasping, alive. Around them, the surviving crew, Mac, DJ, Jax, cheer with a kind of tired joy. The ocean, for now, is quiet. Later, as they float away from the wreckage, the sun finally breaks through the clouds. The laughter is subdued but real. Rainn and Jonas share a glance, not a grand romantic flourish, but something gentler. Respect. Survival. The understanding that whatever comes next, they've already faced the worst of it. And beneath them, far deeper, far darker, the sea holds its secrets again. But for now, the monster sleeps. In a story where the ocean itself seems alive with hunger, it's not just the colossal predator that holds our attention, it's the people caught in its shadow. As the waves crash and steel is torn apart, what emerges most vividly are the characters, each carrying their own burdens, instincts, and fears, each revealing more with every drop of pressure they endure. This isn't just a battle between man and nature. It's a revelation of who they become when the water rises and there's nowhere left to hide. At the center of the storm is Jonas Taylor. From the first time he appears, his presence is quiet but heavy, like someone who's learned how to live with ghosts. He doesn't walk like a man ready for battle. He moves like someone who's done it all before and hated every second of it. There's a weight in his eyes, a history that doesn't need words. He's not the cocky action hero with a smirk and a catchphrase. He's haunted, bitter, worn down by decisions no one else was there to witness. Years ago, Jonas made a call that saved lives, but cost others. He left men behind in a collapsing submersible, convinced that something in the dark had caused the disaster. No one believed him. They called it panic, delusion. But the guilt never left him. He buried it beneath sarcasm, behind booze, in the quiet corners of Thailand where no one asks questions. Until now, when the past rises from the deep in the form of another stranded crew, and this time, someone he used to love is trapped inside. What makes Jonas compelling isn't just his physical strength or his deep-sea expertise. It's that every move he makes is fueled by a desperate kind of redemption. He's not trying to be a hero. He's trying to erase the ghosts. Every time he dives, it's not just for survival, it's for penance. And when the megalodon rises, when the threat becomes undeniable, he doesn't run. He swims straight into its path. Because this isn't just a creature. It's a reckoning. And then there's Rainn. Smart, composed, and fiercely determined, she's not overshadowed by the chaos around her. She commands it. While others freeze, she calculates. While others flinch, she acts. But beneath that brilliance is a quiet ache, the pressure of legacy, the memory of loss. Her mother is gone, her daughter watches her every move, and her father, Dr. Minwei Zhang, still expects the best from her without ever needing to raise his voice. Suyin is driven not by ego, but by responsibility. She wants to prove herself, not to the world, but to herself. Every choice she makes is colored by that. When she volunteers to dive solo into the trench to save the trapped submersible, it's not recklessness. It's resolve. She believes in science, in order, in reason. And when faced with the impossible, a creature that defies all of it, she doesn't break. She adapts. Her relationship with Jonas unfolds quietly, through tension and trust, not flirtation or fanfare. They're drawn together not by romance, but by mutual understanding. Both carry trauma. Both bury it under control. And when they finally lean on each other, it's not out of weakness, it's strength recognizing strength. Mac and DJ, the control room duo, offer more than comic relief. Mac, played with a steady wit, is the glue, calm in a crisis, loyal to the core, and always the first to call out insanity with a level head. He's the voice of reason, the guy who sees everything from a bird's-eye view but never distances himself emotionally. DJ, on the other hand, is all nerves and honesty. He panics. He rants. He says what everyone else is thinking. And yet, when things fall apart, he never leaves. Beneath the fear is a deep reserve of courage, the kind that only appears when the chips are down. They represent two different types of survivors, those who plan and those who react. And both are equally essential when the water turns red. Jax and the wall form another layer of the crew's backbone. Jax is tech-savvy, sharp-tongued, and unshaken. She's one of the first to recognize the threat, one of the last to give up. She doesn't need spotlight or speeches, she just gets the job done. The wall, with his towering frame and kind eyes, is the protector. The big guy who looks out for everyone, who jokes to keep morale alive, and who, when the time comes, sacrifices everything without hesitation. His death hits hard not because it's loud, but because of who he was. Steady. Kind. And gone too fast. Then there's Dr. Minwei Zhang. He's a man of science, of principles, of calm authority. Where others shout, he listens. Where others rush, he reflects. He carries the burden of knowledge, the understanding that they may have unlocked something that cannot be contained. Yet he never flinches. He believes in his daughter, in the mission, and in the idea that even when nature fights back, humanity must face it with grace, not arrogance. His death is one of the film's quieter tragedies. He doesn't die in a blaze of glory. He dies trying to warn others, trying to prevent more loss. And in doing so, he passes the torch to Suyin, who carries his strength forward without needing to say it aloud. The most divisive character, without question, is Jack Morris. At first, he's the charm, the billionaire backer with a grin and a helicopter always waiting. He claims to believe in science, in exploration, in wonder. But underneath the charm is a flaw that's all too human: ego. He doesn't want truth. He wants credit. He wants headlines and legacy and return on investment. When things go wrong, he deflects. When the shark kills, he downplays. And when the danger can't be ignored, he tries to fix it with spin. But the ocean doesn't care about money. And Jack's downfall comes not in fire or betrayal, but in foolishness. Thinking he can handle it alone, he underestimates the creature and overestimates himself. His death is grimly poetic. The man who thought he could by control becomes just another meal in the deep. Among all these players, there's one character who barely speaks, yet leaves a mark: Maying, Suyin's daughter. In her innocence, she sees what others miss. When the shark first brushes past the underwater glass, it's her tiny face it meets. And in that moment, child versus monster, there's a purity to her fear. No logic. No science. Just awe and terror. Her presence throughout the story grounds it. reminds us what's at stake. That it's not just scientists or divers out there. It's children, families, lives. And then there's the megalodon itself. It's easy to see it as just a beast, a thing with fins and teeth and hunger. But the way it's portrayed hints at something more. It's ancient, yes, massive, but also aware. It doesn't attack blindly. It stalks, tests, withdraws, strikes again. It learns. It adapts. In a way, it's the shadow side of Jonas himself, a survivor that's had to kill to live. A relic that the world forgot, now forced into a reality it doesn't belong in. Every time it attacks, it's not just spectacle. It's the past crashing into the present. Every torn ship is a reminder that the ocean still holds dominion. That for all our tech, our money, our bravado, we are still visitors here. And yet, the characters don't give up. They fight. They evolve. They learn to work as one, shedding ego and fear for something stronger. Purpose. Jonas transforms from loner to leader. Suine rises from daughter to decision-maker. Even DJ, who once trembled at the thought of sharks, learns to face the water with courage. By the end, it's not just about killing the monster. It's about confronting fear, reclaiming control, and understanding that while nature may always have the upper hand, humanity's true strength lies not in domination, but in unity. So when the waters finally calm, when the survivors float under a rising sun, what remains is not just relief, but recognition. That they were changed down there. Not by the creature alone, but by each other. Before the first wave broke on screen, before a single fin sliced through the water, before Jonas Taylor dove into the trench and stared into the maw of ancient terror, the story behind the story was already unfolding. Stranger, in many ways, than the movie itself. The making of this underwater blockbuster was a journey through lost rights, delayed dreams, unexpected alliances, and a production that somehow turned decades of Hollywood turbulence into a film that roared across the box office like a prehistoric predator set loose. It all began more than 20 years before the movie ever saw daylight, or moonlight shimmering on the ocean's surface. The novel it was based on, Meg, a novel of deep terror by Steve Alten, was published in 1997, a pulpy, high-concept page-turner with teeth. Hollywood pounced immediately. The rights were optioned, big names floated, and the buzz was loud. But something always went wrong. Scripts failed to impress. Budgets bloated. Directors circled, then vanished. The film was stuck in development hell so long that it became something of a cinematic myth, the shark movie that never was. At one point, the rights lapsed entirely. Then they were picked up again. Warner Brothers eventually secured the project, with Gravity Pictures from China stepping in as a co-producer, a decision that would influence much of the movie's tone and international scope. But it wasn't just a financial partnership. The Chinese market was central to the film's success strategy, which is why many of the movie's pivotal characters, locations, and even narrative beats were shaped with global appeal in mind. It begins with silence, an image of the deep, a dark stretch of water that seems to go on forever. Somewhere far beneath that surface, something stirs. It isn't just the promise of a monster or the first flicker of danger. It's something older, something rooted in the fear of the unknown. That tension, that sense of boundary-breaking descent into the abyss, is where the movie finds its pulse. And in the eyes of critics, this opening, a slow, deliberate breath before the chaos, sets the tone for a film that pretends to be a thrill ride, but sometimes reaches for something deeper. At first glance, it might seem like a simple beast movie dressed in high-gloss visuals and polished stunts. But dig a little deeper, and what emerges is a film more aware of its lineage than it pretends to be. It's a descendant of Jaws, yes, but also of every deep-sea horror that ever made the audience squirm. And it knows that. It leans into the tropes, not to mock them, but to honor them. Critics, depending on where they stood, saw either a clever balancing act or a missed opportunity. But they all saw the same thing, A movie that was trying to bring the ancient underwater monster movie into a new era with every trick modern filmmaking could muster. The first major event that drew critical attention was the dive into the trench. The act of breaking through the false bottom of the Mariana Trench isn't just a plot device, it's a metaphor. The moment the submersible punches through the thermocline into a world lost to time, the film crosses an invisible line between science fiction and ancient myth. Critics noted how this moment plays not just as awe-inspiring discovery but as an act of hubris. Humanity, once again, digs too deep, touches what it does not understand, and lets something loose. In that way, it draws comparisons to stories like Jurassic Park or even Prometheus, narratives where exploration becomes a curse. This dive, and the attack that follows, also triggers the reintroduction of Jonas Taylor. His entrance is not grand. It's reluctant, wounded. Critics pointed to his character as the emotional fulcrum of the film. He isn't just a man with a past, he's the embodiment of survivor's guilt. And that's where the film earns surprising critical depth. Beneath the sleek surface of its monster thrills is a portrait of a man trying to forgive himself. It's in the way Jonas resists returning to the deep, the way he hesitates before every decision, the quiet weight he carries in his eyes when no one is looking. The rescue sequence is another pivotal moment, one that got critics talking about tone. Toshi's sacrifice, calm, deliberate, selfless, is a rare beat of gravity in a film that otherwise moves fast and loud. And it's not undone with a wink or an explosion. It's left to stand. A small, human moment in a film about something inhuman. Many reviewers praised this restraint, noting that while the movie doesn't dwell on loss, it never completely discards it either. Then comes the emergence. The Megalodon doesn't make its first major appearance with music or fanfare. It simply rises, displaces water, shifts weight. Critics noted how this made the creature's threat feel even more primal. It isn't a villain. It isn't angry. It's just hungry. Its presence becomes an ecological imbalance, a sudden dominance in an ecosystem unprepared for it. Much of the commentary surrounding the film looked at this moment through the lens of environmental storytelling, a symbol of nature out of sync, of ancient forces returning to a world that has forgotten how to defend itself. The scene with the shark gliding past Maying in the hallway tank became an instant focal point in critical discussions. Not just for its visual flair, but for its eerie elegance. It's a slow, quiet scare, more akin to horror than action. A child face to face with something vast and silent and unknowable. That moment, some critics argued, was the film's most effective. Because it relied on awe, not adrenaline. The tonal shift, however, wasn't seamless. Critics split over the film's identity crisis. Was it trying to be a straight horror movie? A summer blockbuster? A creature feature throwback? A comedy? In moments like the shark attack on the yacht party or the beach panic scenes, the movie swings towards satire. The inflatable ball scene, the floating dog named Pippin who miraculously survives, it walks the line between tension and parody. Some critics found that delightful. Others found it jarring. But all agreed that the film knew what it was doing. It just wasn't always sure how seriously it wanted to take itself. A key moment that solidified this tonal divide was the first kill. When the smaller Megalodon is pulled onto the boat and presumed dead, the crew celebrates. There's relief, laughter, even a little bit of pride. Then, the real monster emerges. Critics universally praised this twist, not just because it was unexpected, but because it pulled the rug out in a way that felt earned. The story suddenly reasserted its stakes. It reminded the audience that size isn't the only danger. Assumption is. And in doing so, the movie made a statement. You don't kill the past with one lucky shot. Sometimes it has layers. The film's climax, with Jonas and Suine teaming up to take down the true Megalodon, drew comparisons to classic duels between man and beast. But unlike those, this one added modern touches. High-tech equipment, underwater drones, and a hero who fights more with strategy than brute force. Critics noted that Jonas doesn't win by being the toughest, he wins by being the most determined, the most haunted. His confrontation with the shark isn't about victory, it's about closure. And that's where the film's thematic resonance quietly surfaces. This isn't just a story about a giant shark. It's a story about reckoning with the past, with guilt, with mistakes that keep echoing. Jonas's arc mirrors the shark's in strange ways. Both are creatures out of place, dragged from deep isolation into chaos. One fights to go back. The other fights to stay. And somewhere in that conflict, the film finds a strange, beating heart. Not all critics were sold. Some called it uneven, pointing to tonal inconsistency and underused characters. Others praised its confidence, its willingness to lean into absurdity and still find moments of sincerity. What no one denied was that it knew how to entertain. It didn't try to be more than what it was. But sometimes, it surprised you anyway. From a reception standpoint, the audience told a different story. While critics debated its craft, moviegoers turned up in droves. It wasn't just the shark. It was the promise of summer fun, international spectacle, and a movie that didn't talk down to its thrills. It found particular success in China, where the inclusion of Chinese characters, settings, and production talent gave it a unique position in the global market. It wasn't just made for an audience, it was made with one. In fan circles, certain scenes took on cult status. The megalodon crashing into the beach party. The shark cage escape. The final slow-motion dive with Jonas facing down the beast. But perhaps the most discussed was the moment the shark breaches the water in full, its size dwarfing every boat, its body like a submarine with teeth. That shot became the signature image of the film, the one everyone remembered. Not because it was realistic, but because it was mythic. And then came Jason Statham. The idea of casting the British action star known for gritty, grounded roles in a film about a giant prehistoric shark raised eyebrows. Even Statham himself admitted he didn't expect the final tone of the movie to be what it became. Early in the process, he thought he was signing up for a darker, more horror-driven film. "When I first got the script," he later revealed in interviews, "it was like Jaws meets Aliens. It was intense." But by the time production rolled around, the script had evolved. Lighter, funnier, more popcorn spectacle than underwater horror. The result? A Jason Statham movie where he ends up literally fighting a massive shark in hand-to-tooth combat. As wild as the on-screen moments are, some of the strangest events happened behind the camera. For instance, the shoot was notoriously complicated because much of it was filmed in large water tanks and in front of massive green screens, especially the underwater trench sequences. But the real challenge was simulating the abyss. The filmmakers needed to create the illusion of pressure, cold, and total darkness without submerging their actors thousands of feet underwater. So, they used a combination of lighting tricks, digital haze, and physical effects to make the deep-sea environments feel claustrophobic and terrifying. Actors were often soaked for hours on end in chilled tanks, their skin wrinkling, their nerves fraying. Jonas Taylor's weary expressions were sometimes more real than performance. One little-known detail is that much of the underwater gear used in the film, the submersibles, suits, even the gliders, was custom designed from scratch. While some sci-fi films borrow real-life tech and exaggerate it, this production worked with deep-sea consultants to create plausible versions of futuristic diving gear that felt functional but not outlandishly fictional. The result is a kind of near-future realism, where everything feels like it could be developed within a decade or two. And then there's the megalodon itself. You'd think a creature of that scale would be created entirely in post-production. But the production team built partial physical models of the shark's head and body for certain scenes, especially moments where characters are in direct contact. These massive animatronic pieces were operated by puppeteers and hydraulics, designed to lurch and snap with terrifying precision. During one take, the mechanical shark lunged so aggressively in a test run that it sent crew members scrambling, even though it wasn't alive. Actors described the experience as working with a theme park ride possessed by a demon. One of the film's most iconic visuals, Suin's daughter Maying watching the massive creature glide past the glass wall, almost never happened. It was originally written as a different scene entirely, involving just a shadow passing overhead. But during reshoots, the director wanted a more suspenseful, Spielberg-esque moment. So they rebuilt part of the underwater corridor set and worked with the visual effects team to time the massive shark's approach perfectly, matching it to the little girl's expression. The result became one of the film's most chilling and memorable shots. The film also had one of the most unusual sound design approaches of any ocean thriller. Instead of relying entirely on traditional roars or underwater acoustics, the sound team crafted the megalodon's vocalizations using a blend of lion growls, elephant bellows, and slowed-down whale calls, layered together into something truly unsettling. The goal wasn't just to make the creature scary, but to make it alien, something that hadn't been heard in millions of years, echoing from the abyss. And if you thought one giant shark was enough, here's a fact that might surprise you. In early drafts of the script, there were originally 3 megalodons. The plot had an entire family of monsters escaping the trench and wreaking havoc across different parts of the world. It would have set up sequels and expanded the mythology immediately. But the decision was made to scale it back to one primary antagonist with a twist, introducing the second, even larger shark midway through as a surprise. That twist itself was a logistical headache. To sell the moment when the dead shark turns out to be just the first, the crew filmed the scene with an actual animatronic shark and used prosthetic fake blood and silicone intestines. The realism of the dead megalodon had to be believable enough that both characters and audiences would buy the fake-out. The reveal of the true monster coming out of the water shortly after required timing between practical elements and CGI so tight that it took weeks to perfect just a few seconds of screen time. Another strange detail. Jason Statham, who has a background as a competitive diver for England, did most of his own underwater stunts. While stunt doubles were used for wide shots and complex scenes, Statham insisted on training in free diving and advanced breathing techniques to hold his breath for long takes. He spent hours in dive tanks rehearsing scenes where he would swim in close quarters with nothing but a spear gun and sheer adrenaline. At one point, he even suffered a minor ear injury from pressure during a dive scene, but refused to stop filming. On the cultural side, the film sparked a massive interest in megalodons. After its release, bookstores reported a surge in purchases of non-fiction books about prehistoric sharks. Museums and aquariums added new exhibits. YouTube exploded with videos titled, "Could Megalodons Still Exist?" and "Top 10 Deep-Sea Creatures Scarier Than the Meg." The film, while pure fiction, reignited a global curiosity about the ocean's real-life mysteries. And while the tone of the movie stayed light and action-packed, one deleted scene hinted at something darker. In early cuts, there was a sequence showing an entire pod of whales being attacked, not just by the megalodon, but by scavenger creatures disturbed by the trench opening. It was deemed too brutal for the final cut, but test audiences reportedly loved it, and to this day, fans have been clamoring for it to be released. Then there's the strange legacy of the filming location itself. Though set in the Pacific, many beach scenes were filmed in New Zealand. During filming, locals frequently spotted the giant shark rigs being tested in the water, leading to rumors of real shark activity. News outlets even received reports of massive fin sightings, not realizing the crew had dragged half of a megalodon animatronic into the bay for a practical lighting test. And finally, one of the most charming facts, the shark had a name. The crew called the animatronic version Meggie, and between takes, they decorate it with sunglasses, life jackets, or even Santa hats depending on the day. Photos exist, somewhere deep in production archives, of Jason Statham high-fiving Meggie after a successful shot. In the end, for all its absurdity and adrenaline, the making of the movie was a tale of persistence, reinvention, and a group of creatives determined to bring a dream from the trench to the surface. They built monsters. They braved the water. They turned delays into spectacle and confusion into entertainment. What surfaced wasn't just a movie about a shark. It was a shark movie with a story behind it every bit as wild as the one it told. Years after its release, critics began to reassess the film not as a missed masterpiece, but as something rarer, a creature feature with teeth and heart, capable of thrilling while still playing with its own reflection. The balance it struck, between camp and sincerity, between horror and humor, wasn't perfect. But it was bold. And boldness has a strange way of echoing. So when the final scene fades, when the ocean finally stills and the monster slips into memory, the film doesn't leave you with questions. It leaves you with pulse. Because in the end, for all its spectacle, its special effects, its fight scenes and fin slashes, the story worked for one reason. It didn't ask the audience to believe in a shark. It asked them to believe in the depth of the sea, of the past, of the people who dare to swim toward the dark and come back changed. It began not in the water, but in waiting. Years of it. A story about a prehistoric predator, a film that had everything a blockbuster should want. An ancient monster, a haunted hero, the lure of the unknown, but remained trapped in development for 2 decades. Scripts came and went. Directors signed on, then vanished. Studios flirted with it, then walked away. The project, based on Steve Alten's best-selling novel, floated through Hollywood like a ghost ship. Until finally, against the tide of uncertainty, it surfaced. When production finally began, it wasn't just another creature feature being filmed, it was the long-awaited resurrection of an idea once thought extinct. The first decision that shaped everything was scale. The filmmakers knew that to bring this kind of story to life, the world had to feel real, tangible, lived in. That meant practical sets, immersive environments, and a giant shark that couldn't just look good. It had to feel like a living force of nature. But this wasn't going to be a horror movie in the traditional sense. This was something broader, louder, and strangely fun. That mix of tones informed every part of production, from set design to casting to the choreography of every massive, toothy encounter. Principal photography began in New Zealand and China in 2016. The crew found themselves building massive water tanks and shooting in both the natural ocean and controlled aquatic environments. These tanks, some of the largest used for a film of this scale, were designed to allow actors to perform real underwater scenes without relying entirely on visual effects. Jason Statham, with a background as a professional diver for Britain, was a natural fit, though he admitted even he underestimated the demands of acting underwater in full gear with limited visibility. The water sequences weren't just technically complicated, they were physically punishing. Every actor who entered the tank had to learn how to regulate breath, maintain buoyancy, and deliver performances while half-submerged or fully underwater for long takes. The suits were custom-built, and for many scenes, the actors wore weighted belts and earpieces so directors could communicate with them in real time, even while submerged. But perhaps the most fascinating part of the underwater shoot wasn't the actors. It was what they couldn't see. Because the megalodon itself wasn't there. The shark, rendered entirely in post-production by a team of visual effects artists from Scanline VFX and Image Engine, existed only as placeholders during filming. Actors had to react to tennis balls on sticks, green poles, or simply the director yelling, "Now it's charging," off-camera. To make the scenes feel organic, they often rehearsed in advance with storyboards and pre-visualization sequences, animated mock-ups that showed them exactly where the shark would be, how big it would look, and what the camera would be capturing at that moment. Even the iconic moment when the megalodon crashes into the observation tunnel, a scene that caused audiences to gasp as the beast looms behind Maying, was filmed without anything behind the glass. The timing had to be precise, the camera movement calculated to the second. It wasn't until post-production that the creature was added, complete with shadowing, water distortion, and subtle reflections on the glass. Director Jon Turteltaub, best known for the National Treasure films, brought a light touch to the production. He embraced the absurdity of the premise while grounding it in character-driven stakes. He wasn't interested in making a grim horror film. He wanted spectacle, tension, and yes, even humor. The result was a set that balanced intense stunt work with surprising levity. Between takes, Jason Statham cracked jokes with crew members. Rainn Wilson, who played the slick billionaire Jack Morris, improvised many of his lines and often made the crew laugh even when cameras weren't rolling. Bingbing, playing Suine, brought a quiet intensity to her role, and off-screen, was known for making sure the ensemble stayed connected, even during long, grueling shoots. The mechanical shark head, used for close-ups and physical interactions, had a nickname, Meggie. This giant animatronic portion of the megalodon was operated by multiple puppeteers and weighed hundreds of pounds. During testing, one of its jaws accidentally snapped shut too hard, cracking part of a nearby rig and startling a crew of lighting technicians who hadn't expected such a lifelike response. From then on, Meggie was treated with a combination of respect and caution. Some even said superstition. Crew members hung good luck charms from her teeth before big scenes. And then there were the environmental factors. Filming in New Zealand meant unpredictable weather. There were days when the ocean was too rough, forcing last-minute rescheduling. Other days, the water was so calm and glassy that reflections became a visual challenge. Cinematographers used specialized filters and lighting rigs to replicate the mood of an overcast day even under the burning sun. During one night shoot on the beach, a sudden storm rolled in, halting production for hours and nearly washing away a large practical set built into the sand. One of the more unusual challenges came during the filming of the beach panic scene. Hundreds of extras were brought in, outfitted with props, towels, umbrellas, and inner tubes. The scene required them to react to a shark they couldn't see, screaming, splashing, and running in all directions while maintaining continuity. To cue their timing, crew members used a massive speaker system to blast a shark growl sound effect, synced to a loud foghorn. On camera, it looked like pure chaos. But behind the scenes, it was a carefully choreographed ballet of lifeguards, stunt doubles, and assistant directors yelling cues through megaphones. The stunt work throughout the film was another level of insanity. For scenes where characters jump between boats, swim from helicopters, or narrowly escape jaws that could bite through metal, trained stunt performers worked alongside the main cast. One diver performed over 20 free dives in a single day to capture the right take, each time surfacing with just seconds of breath left. Another performer wore a full-weight diving suit in 80-degree heat for 3 hours straight, all for a shot that lasted 5 seconds on screen. Interestingly, the visual effects team studied real great white sharks to understand how the megalodon should move. While many creature features exaggerate animal behavior for effect, the team here wanted a shark that felt real, even when it did impossible things. Animators mimicked how real sharks twist during attacks, how their eyes roll back, how their jaws extend. One frame-by-frame analysis showed that even the megalodon's breathing movements were subtly animated, gills flexing with the swell and contraction of a living body. And when the movie hit theaters, all those layers paid off. Audiences came in droves, hungry for spectacle, and they got it. The film shattered expectations, earning over $500 million worldwide. But perhaps what surprised everyone most was how fun it was. Reviews acknowledged its flaws, its clunky dialogue, its genre clichés, but praised its energy, pacing, and unexpected sincerity. For a movie about a monster shark, it had surprising heart. And much of that came from the cast's chemistry and the care the crew took in crafting something immersive. Even the marketing campaign played into the film's playful tone. Trailers leaned into the absurdity, posters parodied classic shark movie tropes, and social media campaigns asked questions like, "Would you survive the Meg?" while pairing users with different aquatic escape routes. In one promotional event, a 50-foot inflatable shark replica toured beaches and film festivals, becoming an Instagram sensation. Behind the gloss, though, was a production crew that poured their sweat into every shot, building, rehearsing, submerging, waiting. They fought weather. They fought logistics. And more than once, they fought against the weight of expectations that came from reviving a long-dormant project. And yet, what surfaced wasn't just another summer thriller. It was a movie made by people who believed, not just in the monster, but in the thrill of storytelling, in the joy of giant risks and unexpected laughs. in the magic that can happen when you take an idea that's been circling development waters for 20 years and finally let it breach. They went looking for a shark, and they found something bigger. A spectacle born of salt and light and sound. A megalodon movie that, for a fleeting moment, ruled the screen. It starts, as many stories of the sea do, with silence and darkness. A world untouched by sunlight, buried beneath the pressure of time and water, sealed off like a forgotten memory. This is not the blue ocean of postcards and vacation brochures. This is a shadow realm, a trench that splits the earth like a scar, its depths holding secrets that stretch beyond evolution, beyond reason. The moment the story descends into this underworld, something shifts, not just in the narrative, but in the very feel of the film. The setting doesn't just support the story. It becomes it. The locations, crafted and chosen with an eye for contrast, tell a tale all their own. Above the surface, we have the polished glass-paneled world of Mana 1, a deep-sea research station floating like a beacon of modern ambition. It gleams with white lights, curved corridors, and high-tech labs. Everything about it suggests control, safety, knowledge. It's a fortress built by people who believe they can outthink nature. The walls are lined with touchscreens and glowing maps, holograms blinking in silent precision. It's a visual promise. Down there, nothing will surprise us. But the setting betrays them. Because just beyond that comfort is the Mariana Trench, a place that looks like the end of the world. When the camera takes us down, we feel it. The colors change. The clarity fades. Blues turn to greens, then murky grays. Everything becomes uncertain. There's a thick, almost tactile sense of weight pressing on the lens. This isn't just deep water, it's time travel. It's a step backward into the raw, roaring chaos of Earth before humans walked it. The moment the submersible breaks through the thermocline into the hidden ecosystem beneath, the mood shifts again. Suddenly, light returns, not sunlight, but something alien. Bioluminescence pulses in the dark like nervous stars. The trench's undersea garden is lit from within. Glowing jellyfish drift through strange coral structures, fish that look like ghosts zip past the camera. It's beautiful. But it's not inviting. It's too still. Too quiet. And that quiet becomes the first warning. The cinematography here is deliberate. Every wide shot lingers. Every close-up pushes against the glass, reminding us how fragile these explorers really are. The submersible feels tiny, swallowed by the frame, barely a blip in the ocean's belly. That imbalance, between man's arrogance and nature's scale, is part of the visual language of the film. It reminds the viewer, again and again, that we are not the rulers of this space. We are the trespassers. Above, Mana 1 is filmed with crisp, symmetrical angles, everything centered, measured, under control. Below, everything shifts. The trench scenes tilt slightly, the camera unsure of its horizon. Lighting flickers. Colors desaturate. It's like the film itself loses its balance the deeper it goes. And then, the beast arrives. When the megalodon is first revealed, it's not with a roar, but a ripple. A shape, impossibly large, cuts through the blue. The camera doesn't zoom. It retreats, pulled back by instinct, unable to fit the creature in one frame. This is where the setting stops being a backdrop and becomes a player. The ocean itself conspires with the shark. It hides it, reveals it only in flashes. A fin here, a tail there, a massive mouth emerging from the dark like the opening of some ancient gate. And then the world flips. As the creature escapes the trench and enters open waters, the tone shifts. What was once claustrophobic becomes wide, open, exposed. Now, the beaches and boats and shallow bays become the new setting. And they're wrong. Too bright. Too cheerful. The pastel umbrellas and glinting surfboards clash against the quiet dread we've just climbed out of. But that's the point. The setting is supposed to feel safe, until it's not. The beach scenes are filmed with a hyper-real clarity. The water sparkles. The sand is perfect. Children laugh. Tourists float aimlessly on neon inflatables. And yet, the camera begins to watch from below. Long tracking shots follow swimmers from beneath, distorting their legs, turning joy into vulnerability. A drone shot lingers on a mass of people like bait. The threat isn't visible, but it's everywhere. It's in the way the camera stalks them. The shark becomes an absence more than a presence. The setting helps hide it. The ocean is too big, too reflective. The light bounces. The shadows shift. It's impossible to know where the danger is. That visual uncertainty creates tension far beyond what dialogue could achieve. The viewer is put in the water, made to guess, made to wait. One of the film's most visually stunning sequences takes place just before the final battle. Deep under the sea again, this time in open water at night. This is the ocean at its most dreamlike and most menacing. Here, the cinematography slows. The movements become ghostly. The characters are lit only by their own tech, floating in a sea of stars that aren't stars at all, just specks in the dark that might be fish, or might be something else. The final confrontation takes place near a rocky trench, where jagged cliffs rise like underwater mountains. The ocean floor is uneven, sharp, unpredictable. It mirrors the stakes. The water here is murky, stirred by the thrashing of the giant predator. Everything moves fast. The editing cuts tighter. The camera shakes more. We're no longer observing the fight, we're inside it. The setting is now chaos, a collapse of any illusion of control. But just as the film begins in darkness, it ends in light. After the climax, when the shark is finally defeated, the ocean seems to breathe. The camera floats above, gazing down at the survivors, letting the setting return to something familiar. The sun pierces through the waves. The boat drifts. There's color again. Saturation. Warmth. The fear has passed, but only barely. Color grading plays a huge role in the film's emotional rhythm. The trench scenes are desaturated, often tinted in green or cold blue, emphasizing the unnatural nature of what's been uncovered. The surface scenes are warmer, sometimes even golden, giving the illusion of safety and civilization. But every time the shark appears, the color temperature drops. Shadows lengthen. Water turns ink-like. Even in daylight, the megalodon brings the trench with it. Sound design, too, plays off the settings. The ocean is quiet when it needs to be, but filled with rumble, distortion, and pressure noise in the deep. At Mana 1, every beep and buzz of high-tech equipment feels sterile, distant, until it's overwhelmed by the primal roar of the ocean. When the shark attacks, the sounds are sharp and sudden, bone, not flesh, metal, not water. The contrast makes it hit harder. Even the minor locations tell stories. The Thai harbor where Jonas is first introduced is humid, cluttered, real. It's the opposite of Mana 1's sterile corridors. It shows us where he's been hiding, in the noise and grime of a place that doesn't ask questions. Later, the floating lab becomes a symbol of progress collapsing, steel and glass no match for teeth. And all the while, the ocean never changes. It watches. It surrounds. It remains infinite and unmoved, even as the humans fight, fall, and flee. The setting doesn't just enhance the film's mood, it is the mood. Every light flicker, every sonar ping, every stretch of open sea contributes to the film's emotional arc. The fear doesn't come from jump scares or sudden attacks. It comes from the feeling that at any moment, the setting will stop protecting you and start consuming you. In the end, the most powerful force in the film isn't the shark. It's the ocean. It's the trench. It's the silence that waits beneath the waves, daring you to come closer, to break the surface, to keep swimming, and to discover, too late, that the setting was never a backdrop. It was always the thing to fear. In the world of filmmaking, few things are as unpredictable as water. It doesn't care about call sheets or cameras. It crashes and whispers, drenches and delays. And when the decision was made to bring a story about a prehistoric shark to life, a monster born in the trench and reborn in modern chaos, the ocean, in all its stubborn, uncontrollable beauty, became both canvas and challenge. What unfolded behind the scenes wasn't just a production. It was survival. From the very beginning, the shoot was ambitious. This was not a film content with a few digital splashes and green screen dramatics. It demanded scale, scope, a world that felt immersive. The crew found themselves stationed between Auckland, New Zealand, and various parts of China, where locations, studios, and enormous water tanks waited. It was a marriage of East and West, filmmaking resources, talent, and vision drawn from across the globe. And at the center of it all was a cast that somehow clicked in the most unexpected ways. Jason Statham, stoic and sharp as Jonas Taylor, came in with a reputation for toughness. But behind the scenes, he was a magnet for levity. His dry British wit quickly turned tense days into light-hearted ones. Between takes, he could often be found leaning on railing posts, sipping coffee and launching into stories from his days as a competitive diver for England. The crew would gather around, laughing as he casually described terrifying underwater stunts he had performed, not for movies, but for sport. That background in diving wasn't just trivia. It made him uniquely prepared for the grueling underwater shoots. And they were grueling. Entire days were spent in massive tanks where actors had to hold poses, maintain buoyancy, and perform dialogue while submerged or half-submerged in cool, chlorinated water. Statham, ever the professional, often volunteered to do his own dives. His ability to stay calm under pressure became a point of admiration on set. But even he had his limits. In one scene, where Jonas plunges into the water to distract the megalodon with nothing but a spear gun, Statham was required to swim with weights for longer than usual. After 3 takes, he surfaced, pulled off his mask, and with a laugh, said, "If I black out, someone film it, it'll be great for marketing." The crew chuckled, and then promptly gave him a 30-minute break. Bingbing, playing Suyin, was quieter, more reserved, but fierce in her focus. Fluent in both English and Mandarin, she often served as a bridge between the Chinese production teams and the Western crew. Her commitment to getting the science right was notable. She worked with consultants to understand marine biology terminology and would sometimes stop takes to ask, would a real oceanographer say this? Her connection with child actor Shuya Sophia Kai, who played Meiying, was especially heartwarming. Between scenes, Bingbing would help her practice lines, comfort her during difficult takes, and even share snacks during long days. Their bond translated beautifully on screen, lending emotional depth to their mother-daughter dynamic. Behind the camera, director Jon Turteltaub brought unexpected warmth to the set. Known for his work on National Treasure, Turteltaub didn't rule the production with iron discipline, but with disarming humor and calm. His mantra was simple: let's have fun, even if a giant shark is trying to eat us. He often walked around barefoot during tank shoots, gesturing wildly as he described action beats to his cast. During especially complex sequences, like the infamous beach attack scene, he climbed up to high platforms to direct extras with a megaphone, yelling, "Okay, now pretend you don't see the shark, just the panic." That scene alone required hundreds of extras and meticulous planning. The beach was lined with umbrellas, floats, food carts, all arranged with precision so that when the chaos started, it would unravel believably. Extras were coached on specific reactions. Some were splashers, others were runners, and a select few were designated to lose their flotation devices. Assistant directors armed with bullhorns cued screams in waves, creating a visual ripple of panic across the set. One of the more comical moments came when a remote-controlled floating dog, used for a test shot, malfunctioned and floated straight into camera view during an otherwise perfect take. It drifted lazily across the frame, paddling with robotic paws. The crew couldn't stop laughing, and the take was later affectionately referred to as the Dog Day Afternoon. Despite the joy, the challenges were constant. Filming water scenes indoors was difficult enough, but outdoor sequences often turned into exercises in weather prediction. In New Zealand, the crew set up for a major action shot involving a rescue boat and a megalodon breach. They had planned for clear skies. Instead, a sudden storm rolled in from the south. The wind shredded tents, tilted lighting rigs, and forced the team to evacuate half the equipment. It was 3 days before filming resumed, and the set had to be rebuilt from scratch. One of the more delicate sequences was the moment Mei Ying sees the shark for the first time in the underwater corridor. The camera needed to capture her reaction just as the CG shark would swim past the glass wall. Because the shark didn't exist yet, the young actress had to imagine the terror. Jon Turteltaub knelt beside the camera, describing the moment to her in a hushed, dramatic voice. "Okay, you see a big eye. Now teeth. Now it turns its head like it knows you're watching." Her performance was so natural that the VFX team later built the animation around her, rather than the other way around. Speaking of effects, the team at Scanline VFX faced monumental tasks. Rendering the megalodon wasn't just about scale, it was about weight, motion, texture. They studied actual shark behavior, watching slow-motion footage of great whites to replicate their muscle ripples, jaw extensions, and eye movement. Every water displacement, every fin ripple, was simulated to mimic how a real creature would interact with an environment. One visual effects supervisor confessed that the hardest part wasn't making the shark scary, it was making it believable. Meanwhile, production designer Christopher Glass was busy turning sets into fully functional environments. Mana 1 was a marvel of design, constructed across 2 separate studio locations. Its gleaming hallways, observation decks, and labs were built to be walked through without cuts. This allowed long tracking shots and gave actors a sense of real geography. Set designers hid Easter eggs in the labs, books with titles like Sharkology 101 and Don't Tap the Glass, some of which only eagle-eyed viewers have spotted. Among the crew, camaraderie bloomed. On long shoot days, traditions formed. There was Shark Joke Hour during lunch breaks, where cast members competed to tell the worst aquatic puns. Rainn Wilson reportedly won more than once with gems like, "This set's really making a splash." There were group karaoke nights during off days in Auckland, with cast and crew belting out everything from Queen to Mandarin pop hits. Then there were the moments of quiet. When a night shoot wrapped at 3 a.m. after 12 straight hours in the tank, the cast would often sit on the edge of the set, feet in the water, passing around hot tea and talking about the scenes still to come. It was in those in-between hours that bonds were formed, not just between actors, but between gaffers, grips, editors, and producers who were all in the same current, riding the same wave. The film may have looked effortless on screen, a sleek, high-energy thrill ride, but behind every scene was a small army of people battling water, fatigue, and the unpredictability of an ocean story. They built models, dove into tanks, fought deadlines, chased weather. They laughed. They waited. They wondered whether audiences would buy into a giant shark story that dared to be fun and fierce in equal measure. When it all came together, there was a quiet moment on the final day of shooting. The cast gathered at the dock set one last time, just as the sun began to rise over the New Zealand coast. No cameras. No lighting. Just them. They watched the horizon and listened to the water. It was still. The shark was gone. But the story they'd chased across 2 continents, through salt and shadow, pressure and play, had found its surface. And it was ready to swim. The ocean is vast not just in depth, but in meaning. It holds more than salt and silence. It holds secrets, fears, echoes of ancient power. When this story dives into the trench, it doesn't just uncover a lost predator. It opens a door to a deeper conversation about survival, redemption, control, and the fragile line between what we believe we understand and what lies just beneath. The monster may wear fins and teeth, but it's the ideas it stirs up, about nature, about humanity, about legacy, that give the film its true bite. At its surface, the movie plays like a spectacle. Giant shark, terrified swimmers, tense rescues, epic confrontations. But threaded beneath the explosions and chase sequences is a surprisingly rich fabric of themes that speak to our relationship with the unknown, our fear of the uncontrollable, and our desperate need to reconcile with the past. And at the center of it all, always, is the sea. The most immediate theme is man versus nature, the timeless battle between humanity's belief in its own dominance and the relentless unpredictability of the natural world. Mana 1, the high-tech research facility hovering over the Mariana Trench, is a monument to this confidence. It gleams with glass, hums with technology, and pulses with certainty. Its very existence says, "We have reached the bottom of the world, and there's nothing left to fear." But nature, as always, waits. And when the trench is pierced, when the thermocline is breached, nature doesn't just respond. It corrects. The megalodon that emerges from the deep isn't a villain, it's a consequence. A physical embodiment of the price of intrusion. It doesn't chase people out of malice, but out of instinct. It's not evil. It's ancient. And it reminds us that the more we try to conquer nature, the more likely we are to unleash what we can't control. This theme is echoed in the character of Jonas Taylor. He is not the architect of Mana 1's hubris, but he's one of its inheritors. Years before the events of the story, he faced something terrible in the deep, something he couldn't name. He made a choice, to leave behind those he couldn't save. And for that, he was branded a coward, a madman. His journey isn't just about stopping a shark. It's about confronting what he saw and who he became because of it. Jonas represents redemption, the second major theme. Not the grand cinematic kind filled with applause and hero worship, but the quiet, grueling kind where a man has to return to the very place that broke him and try to be better this time. His arc is not about being right, it's about being willing. Willing to dive again. To face it. To choose courage not because it's easy, but because it costs him something. That's why the trench isn't just a location. It's a symbol. It represents the past. The repressed. The guilt and the memory we bury so deep we hope they never return. And yet they always do. The megalodon is born from that trench the way trauma is born from memory. Suddenly, violently, uninvited. Jonas's return to the trench is both literal and metaphorical. It's a descent into himself. And only by going back down can he rise again. Rainn, too, carries thematic weight. Her story is about legacy and responsibility. She's not driven by ego, but by duty, both to her daughter and to her father, Dr. Zhang, whose calm intellect and quiet authority guide much of the film's moral compass. Rainn doesn't just want to prove she's capable. She wants to carry forward something meaningful. Her decision to enter the trench, to stand beside Jonas, to face the shark, all of it stems from a deep belief in doing what's right, even when it's terrifying. Her daughter, Maying, becomes a symbol in her own right, innocence in the face of awe. When she first sees the shark glide past the glass, she doesn't scream. She stares. It's a moment of pure cinematic magic. A child and a monster, separated by inches. In that scene, the megalodon isn't just danger. It's wonder. A reminder that not all fear is evil. Sometimes, fear is respect. The kind that makes you hold your breath and whisper, "What else don't we know?" And then there's the shark itself. Symbolically, it wears many faces. It's nature's wrath, yes. But also time's reminder. That the past doesn't stay buried. That extinction is never absolute. That survival leaves scars, and those scars have teeth. The megalodon isn't just big, it's impossible. A challenge to everything we think we know. And that impossibility is what makes it terrifying. It doesn't follow the rules. It rewrites them. Even the deaths in the film carry symbolic resonance. Toshi's self-sacrifice, for example, isn't played for melodrama. It's quiet, efficient, and noble. He writes a farewell note. He locks himself in. And he smiles. It's not just bravery. It's the ultimate surrender of control. In a movie full of people trying to outthink, outswim, or outfight a force of nature, Toshi accepts his place in the story. He becomes a symbol of selflessness, of understanding when a life saved is worth more than a life preserved. On the other end of the spectrum is Jack Morris, the billionaire backer whose focus remains on optics, reputation, and profits. He symbolizes corporate blindness, the idea that everything can be managed, monetized, spun into something digestible. His arc ends, fittingly, with irony. He tries to escape the chaos he helped fund, only to be devoured by it. A man who thought he could ride the wave is pulled under by it instead. The film also plays with the idea of illusion versus truth. The beach scene, filled with colorful floats and laughter, feels safe. But the audience knows better. The illusion of peace is pierced by the unseen shadow beneath the water. That tension, between what seems and what is present throughout the film. Mana 1 seems impenetrable. Jonas seems reckless. The shark seems contained. And each time, that illusion is shattered. Color is used symbolically, too. The trench is filmed in cold greens and grays, underscoring the alien quality of the deep. The ocean surface is brighter, more inviting, until blood clouds the water and the color drains away. Even the lighting inside Mana 1 shifts as the story darkens. The safe blue of science turns sterile. The warm yellow of comfort becomes caution. The visual palette mirrors the emotional descent. Another quiet theme is reconnection. Jonas isn't just trying to kill a monster. He's trying to reconnect with his past, with his ex-wife, with himself. Suine is trying to connect with her legacy, with her daughter, and with someone who sees the world the way she does. The survivors, scattered across cultures and disciplines, must learn to work as one. The film's emotional core rests not in heroism, but in cooperation. The idea that survival doesn't come from lone wolves, but from packs that form under pressure. Even humor serves a thematic purpose. Characters like DJ and Mac use levity not to undercut fear, but to survive it. Their jokes are armor. They remind us that in the face of the unknown, sometimes the only choice is to laugh. Not because it's funny, but because laughter is a kind of defiance. A refusal to give in. And as the film builds toward its climax, these themes converge. The final showdown isn't just a man versus a shark. It's Jonas choosing not to run, not to retreat. It's him diving toward the thing that once broke him, not because he thinks he'll win, but because he knows it's the right thing to do. That's the heart of his redemption. Not victory, but volition. And when the shark finally sinks, when the water stills, and the survivors climb back into the light, what's left isn't triumph. It's balance. Restored, however temporarily. The Megalodon, for all its power, was never the villain. It was the mirror. It showed who we are when fear arrives. It revealed who sacrifices, who runs, who stands. And in doing so, it turned a simple story into something deeper. Not just a chase, but a descent. Not just a monster, but a memory. And maybe that's the truest theme of all. That the real deep isn't in the ocean. It's in us. Some stories are built to roar, and this one was never meant to whisper. From the first moment its creators imagined a prehistoric terror gliding through the deep, there was one truth they understood better than most. If you're going to bring a megalodon to the surface and unleash it on the modern world, it can't feel like fiction. It has to feel like a pulse. And that pulse, that rhythm of tension and spectacle, would be built not just with effects, but with a precise choreography of filmmaking techniques that turned water into weapon and silence into suspense. At the heart of the film's immersive power is a commitment to clarity in chaos. Jon Turteltaub's direction doesn't try to overwhelm the audience with frantic motion or disorienting edits. Instead, it leans into geography, knowing where the characters are, how close the danger is, and how to build anxiety not through confusion, but through proximity. The camera often lingers a second longer than expected, letting a fin glide through frame or allowing the quiet to stretch just a little too far. It's in that patience that dread begins to form. To capture the ocean's dual personality, serene on the surface, violent below, the cinematography adopts a split identity. Above the waterline, the visuals are vibrant and crisp. Sunlight dances on waves, creating an almost idyllic illusion. But dip beneath, and the palette changes entirely. Colors fade into cool blues and murky greens. Light fractures. Visibility tightens. It's a reminder that the ocean isn't one place, it's two worlds, layered on top of each other. And what lives below doesn't follow the rules of the world above. Cinematographer Tom Stern played with contrast as a narrative device. The calm was always too calm. The brightness just a little too sterile. So when the violence arrived, when the shark struck, it tore not just through the water, but through the very mood of the frame. This manipulation of tone through light and shadow was essential in shaping the viewer's emotional response. It wasn't just about showing the shark, it was about sensing it before it appeared. But capturing a creature that doesn't exist is an art form of its own. The Megalodon was rendered by Scanline VFX and Image Engine, two studios with long resumes in crafting digital destruction. But here, the challenge wasn't just technical. It was philosophical. How do you make something this massive feel believable? The answer came through texture, scale, and restraint. The animators avoided giving the shark cartoonish expressions or over-designed features. Instead, they studied real sharks, particularly great whites, and built the Megalodon with anatomical reverence. Its movements were slow, heavy, deliberate. Its attacks were sudden, not prolonged. It didn't posture. It consumed. And it didn't need to be on screen for long to terrify. The filmmakers understood that what you don't show is often more powerful. So instead of flooding the film with digital mayhem, they limited the creature's full-body appearances. When it emerged, it did so with impact, rising from the dark in a single take or tearing through a boat in a wide shot that let the audience absorb its sheer scale. Every time it appeared, it felt earned. To ground those effects in reality, the team built massive physical sets and practical environments. The underwater labs of Mana 1 were constructed with functioning corridors and connected rooms so that the camera could track characters in long, unbroken movements. The result was a sense of spatial consistency, an understanding of where danger was coming from. It made the action more immersive, more intimate. For the underwater sequences, the actors trained in breath control and water movement. Though many of the deep-sea scenes were shot in controlled tank environments, the lighting and pressure simulation were designed to mimic real trench conditions. Divers had to perform in cold water, sometimes weighted to stay submerged, their movements choreographed to match the camera's gliding path. Jason Statham's background in diving made him a natural, and he often performed scenes that would typically require stunt doubles, allowing the cinematographers to frame tighter and stay in the moment. But even with all these visuals, the film would have collapsed without sound. The sound design is one of the most overlooked triumphs. The ocean is never silent, but in this film, its voice is manipulated with surgical precision. When things are calm, there's a soft, omnipresent hum, a blend of sonar pings, creaking metal, distant whale songs. It creates a false sense of security. But when the shark nears, the soundscape changes. Low-frequency rumbles begin, almost imperceptibly. Then a whoosh. Then silence. The water itself seems to hold its breath before the strike. When the Megalodon attacks, the audio explodes with layered chaos. There's the shattering of glass, the groan of metal, the surge of displaced water, and the sudden, horrifying snap of teeth through hulls. But all of it is mixed with clarity. No matter how chaotic the scene, the viewer never loses the source of the threat. That sonic consistency grounds the action and makes it feel personal. The score, composed by Harry Gregson Williams, walks a careful line between traditional monster movie cues and more modern, pulse-driven tension. The theme for the shark itself isn't bombastic, it's minimal. Pulsing drums. A low-string drone. dissonant notes that don't resolve. It's not the melody of a creature, it's the heartbeat of inevitability. When that music swells, it doesn't scream, "Villain." It whispers, "Too late." Editing also played a crucial role in sustaining momentum without exhaustion. The pacing of the film is deceptively tight. Though the megalodon is the draw, it doesn't dominate the first act. Instead, the film builds, slowly introducing the trench, the team, the dynamics, the doubts. The first attack is quick, unclear, and wrapped in mystery. The edit holds back. But once the creature is revealed, the pacing accelerates. Cuts become tighter. Action scenes move faster. But crucially, the film always finds space to breathe after a major sequence. Moments of silence. Glances. A chance for characters to process and for the audience to recover. That balance is key. Without it, the film would collapse under its own spectacle. But the filmmakers understood that the best thrillers are roller coasters, not walls. You need the climb, the drop, the slow curve before the next scream. Even marketing played into this rhythm. Trailers were cut to echo the structure of the film, quiet at first, teasing the scale, then accelerating into madness. Posters emphasized size over gore. "There's always a bigger fish," one tagline suggested, tapping into a primal fear, not just of sharks, but of the unknown beyond the shark. That marketing strategy, paired with the film's wide international appeal, helped propel it to a box office phenomenon. The numbers speak for themselves. With a budget hovering around $130 million, the film took a gamble. Shark films had become niche, either deeply serious or openly camp. But this one swam the middle lane, big enough to impress, self-aware enough to enjoy. That balance made it a global hit. It pulled in over $530 million worldwide, with massive success in China thanks to its bilingual cast and Chinese co-production backing. It became one of the highest-grossing shark movies of all time, second only to Jaws, and did so by embracing spectacle without sacrificing sincerity. What made that success possible was more than just a giant monster. It was a commitment to craft, to layering practical and digital effects, to capturing tension through lens choice, sound design, and measured editing, to understanding that fear isn't just about what's on screen, it's about how long you're forced to wait for it. In the final act, when Jonas plunges back into the ocean for a one-man showdown, the filmmaking reaches its apex. The camera narrows. The sound dims. The music stills. The shark circles. Every element tightens, converging on a single moment of focus. And when it hits, when the harpoon pierces skin, when blood blooms in the water, when silence returns, it feels earned. Because it wasn't just a battle. It was a symphony of technique. Every lens flare, every frame, every drop of sound had led to this. The story had teeth. But the film had craft. And that, more than any monster, is what made it unforgettable. They say a film can only be as strong as the people who bring it to life, and in the case of this cinematic deep-sea showdown, the faces behind the fear were as central to the experience as the beast itself. For all the weighty suspense, the booming score, the shimmering expanse of digital ocean, it was the cast who made audiences care.